The last sower. Nissavel counted her heartbeats as she huddled inside the rusted exosuit shell. 1, 2, 3 steady now. The bounty hunters would pass if she remained perfectly still. Her Phaeloran skin, normally a luminous violet blue, had dulled from weeks without proper nutrition, the bioluminescent markings along her arms fading to almost nothing. The hunters' voices carried on the thin air of Corvan 6, a discarded mining world left to rot at the edge of civilized space. Their footsteps crunched through the petrified soil just meters from her hiding place. "Signal's choppy," one said, voice distorted through his helmet, "but she's near." "Better be," replied another. "Consortium's paying triple for this one. Apparently she didn't just steal research, she sabotaged years of crop development. 500 million dead on Celis 4 from the resulting famine." Nissa bit her lip until she tasted blood. Lies, all lies. She had tried to prevent the crop failure, had discovered the genetic vulnerability in the modified strains weeks before deployment. Her warnings had been silenced, her research altered, her name blackened when the inevitable happened. The voices faded. Nissa waited another 100 heartbeats before easing herself from the exosuit cavity. Her limbs screamed in protest, stiff from hours of immobility. Night was falling, the planet's weak sun sinking behind jagged mountains of excavated rock. She needed shelter, water, something to quiet the gnawing emptiness in her stomach. 3 days without food, 2 without proper water. The portable purifier in her pack had failed, leaving her to ration the last half-liter. She stumbled forward, following the contours of the abandoned quarry. The colony's main settlement lay 10 kilometers north, but she dared not approach, too obvious, too exposed. The wind picked up, carrying fine particles that stung her eyes and throat. Corvan 6's atmosphere was technically breathable but filled with mining residue, a caustic mix that would eventually scar her lungs. Just another slow death to avoid the quick one the hunters promised. As darkness fell completely, Nissa spotted an anomaly in the wasteland ahead, straight lines where there should be none. A structure partially hidden against a cliff face, not the prefabricated units of the mining operation but something, deliberate, built by hand. She approached cautiously, survival knife drawn. The building was simple but solid. Stone walls with salvaged metal reinforcements, a pitched roof that would shed the planet's infrequent but violent rains. No lights, no power signature, abandoned perhaps. A sound made her freeze, movement from inside. Nissa weighed her options. Confrontation in her weakened state was unwise, but the alternative was exposure to the bitter night and the hunters who still prowled the area. Before she could decide, the entrance darkened with a massive silhouette. Human male towering nearly 2 meters tall. Bare-chested despite the chill, his copper-brown skin covered in a sheen of dust that caught the starlight. For a long, suspended moment, they stared at each other. "You're bleeding," he said finally, voice like gravel beneath boots. Nissa touched her face, finding wetness where the wind-driven particles had cut her cheek. "I'm fine." "You're not," his assessment was flat factual. Dehydrated, malnourished, pursued. She stiffened. "How do you?" "Patrol ships have been circling for days, not maintenance or supply runs, too small, hunter class." He stepped aside, gesturing to the shelter's entrance. "They'll detect your heat signature out here." Suspicion warred with desperation. "Why help me?" The man's expression remained neutral. "I don't need a corpse outside my home." It wasn't charity then, just practicality. Nissa could respect that. She stepped inside, knife still gripped tightly. The shelter's interior was Spartan but organized. A stone hearth with glowing embers provided both warmth and light. Tools hung on the walls, hand-forged implements alongside salvaged mining equipment. A shelf held jars of what appeared to be dried plant matter. Food. Her stomach rumbled treacherously. "Sit," the man indicated a simple bench near the fire. He moved to a water basin, filled a cup, and extended it to her. When she hesitated, he drank first, then refilled it. Nissa accepted, sipping slowly despite her thirst. "Thank you, she paused, calculating the risk of honesty. "Nissa." "Galen," he turned away, busying himself with something by the hearth. "You're not human." "Phaeloran," she watched him carefully. "Problem." "No," he returned with a bowl containing a thick paste, reconstituted protein with some kind of root vegetable. "Eat slowly, your system needs time." Nissa followed his advice, though it took considerable restraint. As warmth and sustenance began to restore her, she studied her reluctant host more carefully. Galen moved with the measured purpose of someone accustomed to conserving energy. His body was heavily muscled, not from vanity but necessity, built by labor and endurance. Scars mapped his torso and arms, some from accidents, others unmistakably from conflict. His face was weathered, lines etched deeply around eyes that had seen too much. She put his age around 40 standard years, though hard living could have accelerated the process. You're a terraformer, she said suddenly, noticing the specialized tools among his collection. Pioneer Core. Something flickered across his expression, once. What happened to the rest of your team? There is no team. His tone left no room for further questions on that subject. Nissa nodded. She understood boundaries. How long have you been here? 7 planetary cycles, since the Core abandoned Corvan 6 as unprofitable for rehabilitation. The implications stunned her. You stayed when everyone left voluntarily. Galen stoked the fire, his movements deliberate. The Core makes collective decisions, I make my own. To what end? This planet is dying. The mining depleted the magnetosphere. Solar radiation will make it completely uninhabitable within a decade. 9 years, 4 months, he corrected. Enough time. For what? To finish what I started. The conversation lapsed into silence. Nissa finished her meal, the best she'd had in weeks despite its simplicity. Outside, the wind howled through abandoned machinery, creating ghostly whistles and moans. They'll search the settlements first, Galen said eventually. Then fan out to secondary structures. They'll be here by midday tomorrow. Nissa's brief security evaporated. I should go, I've put you at risk. Where? The simple question deflated her. There was nowhere to go on Corvan 6, nowhere the hunters wouldn't eventually find her. I can hide you, Galen continued, surprising her. There's a root cellar beneath the eastern wall, dampened signature emergency supplies, but I need to know what they want. Me dead preferably, though alive works too. Why? Nissa stared into the fire. Because I know too much. Because I refused to be silenced when I discovered that the consortium's modified crop strains had a fatal genetic flaw. They deployed anyway, knowing the crops would fail. The resulting famine created dependence on their relief supplies, which came with political conditions, resource rights, military access. And they blamed you for the failures. Elegant solution. The whistleblower becomes the saboteur, she laughed bitterly. My own research was altered to make it look like I introduced the vulnerability. By the time I realized what was happening, the arrest orders were issued. Galen absorbed this in silence, then stood and crossed to a crude workbench. He returned with what looked like a handcrafted blade, not a utility knife but a weapon balanced for combat. Can you fight? He asked. Not like you, she admitted, but I'm not defenseless. He nodded, pressing the knife into her hand. Rest now, I'll wake you before dawn. Nissa hesitated. Why help me, really? Galen looked at her for a long moment, his expression inscrutable. Because I recognize what it looks like when someone's been betrayed by the system they served. He turned away, ending the conversation. Nissa found herself directed to a pallet in the corner, simple but clean. As exhaustion claimed her, she watched Galen methodically checking his tools, preparing defenses, his movements those of someone who had done this before. Not just a terraformer, she realized, something else, something forged in conflict. Her last thought before sleep claimed her was that perhaps, against all odds, she had found not just shelter but an ally in this wasteland at the edge of nowhere. Shades among ruins. Dawn broke over Corvan 6 with reluctant light filtered through dust-choked skis. Nissa awoke to find Galen already active, moving with quiet efficiency around the shelter. He had laid out what appeared to be a collection of modified mining gear, breather masks, reinforced gloves, and impact-resistant vests. Put these on, he said, noticing her stirring. They're coming, 3 signatures approaching from the south ridge. Nissa dressed quickly, strapping on the protective gear. It was oversized for her slender Phaeloran frame, but better than nothing. What's the plan? Galen handed her a small device. Emergency transponder. If we get separated, activate it. Range is limited, planetary interference, but I'll find you. He paused, eyes locking with hers. If captured, they'll take you off-world immediately. We prevent that at all costs. The word carried more weight than its single syllable suggested. This is my territory, he said simply. Then he lifted a concealed door in the floor, revealing a narrow passage. This leads to a natural cave system. Most tunnels collapsed in the last quake, but I've kept one route clear. Follow it to the end. And you? I'll join you once I've dealt with them. Alarm tightened Nissa's chest. There are 3 of them, Galen, armed professionals. The corner of his mouth twitched, not quite a smile. I wasn't always a terraformer. He handed her a small pack. Go now. Instinct told her to argue, but logic prevailed. Nissa descended into the darkness, the passage closing above her. The tunnel was tight but navigable, clearly maintained despite the planet's geological instability. She moved swiftly, guided by bioluminescent markers Galen had placed along the route. 10 minutes later, she emerged in a small crater beyond the ridgeline and froze in disbelief. Before her stretched something impossible, a garden. Hidden from aerial view by the crater's rim, protected from wind by strategic stone placements, dozens of plants grew in carefully arranged beds. Some she recognized as resilient species engineered for harsh environments, others were native specimens coaxed back from extinction. A water collection system captured moisture from the atmosphere, feeding the plants through buried irrigation lines. This was what Galen had meant by finishing what he started, not just survival but restoration. Nissa moved through the garden in wonder, her botanist training identifying the painstaking work involved. Years of selective breeding, soil enrichment, protective measures against radiation. This wasn't just gardening, it was defiance against planetary death. A sudden explosion shattered her reverie. Nissa spun toward the source, Galen's shelter. Smoke billowed above the ridge. Fear propelled her forward, but caution made her approach from behind the rock formations. She reached a vantage point and saw chaos below. One hunter lay motionless near the shelter's entrance. Another was engaged in combat with Galen, while the third circled, weapon drawn. Despite being outnumbered, Galen moved with controlled violence, his fighting style ruthlessly efficient. This was not improvised defense but trained combat skill. The circling hunter spotted movement on the ridge. He adjusted his aim upward. Nissa ducked as energy pulses sizzled overhead, but the damage was done, her position compromised. The bounty hunter started climbing toward her, speaking into his comm unit. Target spotted, requesting immediate extraction. Orbital pickup. If their ship descended, escape would become impossible. Nissa retreated toward the garden, mind racing. Her knowledge of plant biochemistry, could it be weaponized? She scrambled through the beds, gathering specific leaves and seed pods, crushing them together in her hands. The mixture burned her skin, but she continued, adding water from the irrigation system to create a caustic paste. The hunter crested the ridge, weapons sweeping the area. Don't move, Vel. Consortium wants you alive, but they didn't specify in what condition. Nissa raised her hand slowly, the paste concealed in her closed fist. The Consortium framed me, they engineered the famine. Not my concern, he approached, reaching for restraints. It should be, she flung the paste into his exposed face where his visor was raised. The reaction was immediate, blistering, temporary blindness. The hunter screamed, firing wildly. Nissa dodged, tackling him around the knees. They fell together, rolling dangerously close to the crater's edge. The hunter's superior strength was overwhelming, but his disorientation gave her an advantage. She struck pressure points along his shoulders, Phaeloran combat training focusing on nerve clusters. His grip weakened enough for her to break free. She scrambled away, retrieving his dropped weapon. The hunter staggered to his feet, vision clearing but movement impaired. You're dead, he snarled, if not today then. A projectile struck him mid-sentence, a stone thrown with impossible force and accuracy. The impact sent him tumbling over the crater's edge. Galen stood at the ridgeline, breathing heavily, blood seeping from a gash along his ribs, but alive. The others, Nissa asked. One dead, one unconscious and restrained. He surveyed the garden, exposed now to her eyes. You found it. It's remarkable, she said. How long have you been working on this? Since I arrived. He moved forward, checking irrigation lines damaged in the struggle. The Corps declared Corvin 6 beyond rehabilitation. Their metrics didn't account for small-scale restoration. Nissa knelt beside a flowering plant, recognizing it as an adaptive variety she herself had worked on before her exile. You've created a micro-ecosystem, an environmental anchor point. Galen nodded. One garden becomes two, two become four, eventually enough to begin atmospheric processing. A centuries-long project. I have time, he looked at her directly, and now expertise. The implication hung between them. Nissa hadn't considered staying, hadn't considered stopping anywhere. Running had become her existence. Their ship will send more when these don't report back, she said. Then we prepare, Galen gestured to the unconscious hunter, starting with information, who sent them, what they know. And then, we build not just walls, a future. They spent the day interrogating the captured hunter, learning the Consortium's reach extended further than either had guessed. The bounty on Nissa had tripled, her continued freedom representing a dangerous loose end in their famine-for-profit scheme. By nightfall, they had relocated to a secondary shelter deeper in the canyons. Galen's network of hideouts spoke to years of paranoid preparation, or perhaps just pragmatism on a hostile world. Why did you really stay when the terraforming Corps left? Nissa asked as they tended wounds by firelight. The truth this time. Galen was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. I commanded the mission to Pelios II, final rehabilitation phase. We received orders to accelerate the timeline, deploy atmospheric catalysts before testing was complete. Understanding dawned, something went wrong. Everything went wrong. Chemical chain reaction, toxic rainfall, 3,000 colonists had already been settled. His voice remained steady, but his hands stilled. When I refused the next accelerated timeline for Corven 6, they relieved me of command. The Corps departed, I stayed. To do it right, Nissa finished. To do it right, he confirmed, even if it takes a lifetime. Nissa reached for his hand, her luminescent markings glowing softly in the dim light. My research, before they corrupted it, was focused on adaptive botanicals for extreme environments, plants that could detoxify soil, accelerate atmospheric conversion. Useful skills, Galen said, the understatement almost humorous. More than useful, essential, she squeezed his hand. Together we might reduce your lifetime project to decades. For the first time, something close to hope crossed his features. The hunters will return eventually. Then we'll be ready, better shelters, better defenses, she gestured to his wound, better medical supplies. A substantial commitment for someone who was escaping the system. Nissa smiled faintly. Perhaps I'm tired of running. Perhaps this broken world needs exactly what both of us can give it. Galen didn't smile back. She suspected such expressions were foreign to his features, but something in his posture eased. He reached into his pack and withdrew a small container. Inside were seeds, dozens of varieties, preserved against an uncertain future. Tomorrow, he said, we plant these in the secondary garden site. The soil there needs amendment, but with your knowledge. We'll make it work, she finished. Outside, the toxic winds of Corven 6 continued their endless assault against the ruins of human exploitation. But within the shelter, surrounded by the unlikely alliance of a disgraced botanist and a terraformer seeking redemption, something new had taken root, fragile, but growing stronger with each passing hour. Not just survival, renewal.